We're looking at a passage in Mark chapter 1 where Jesus heals a man of an unclean spirit at the synagogue in Capernaum. Luke gives a similar account of this event in Luke chapter 4, but I only want to focus on one word found in both accounts: authority. When Jesus enters into Capernaum, his first stop was the synagogue, where he began to teach. The word synagogue comes from a Greek word that means to gather together. You see, the temple in Jerusalem was too far of a hike for many Jews to make to worship regularly, so many towns had synagogues that served as both places of worship and also as schools. During the week, Jewish boys would come to learn the scriptures and about Jewish law and religion, but on Saturdays, the Sabbath, Jewish men would gather together for prayer, scripture readings, and to receive a lesson or interpretation of scripture from a teacher. Synagogues didn't have permanent teachers, so typically the synagogue leader would invite visiting teachers to come and speak on the Sabbath. That's why we often see Jesus teaching in the synagogues of the different towns he visited. Now, when the teachers of the religious law, or scribes, gave an interpretation of scripture, it often followed one or more statements quoted from well-known and respected rabbis. This was so that their words would have more authority and be received by their listeners. They would start by saying something like, "You have heard it said by Rabbi so-and-so," and then quote the words of that rabbi to the people. This would let the listeners know that this teacher knew what he was talking about, and his words had the authority of a well-respected rabbi. When Jesus taught in the synagogue, however, we see that the people were astonished at his teaching, for he taught them as one having authority, and not as the scribes. And they were exactly right. Jesus was not like the scribes. Jesus didn't begin his teachings by saying, "You have heard it said by Rabbi so-and-so." But he would start by saying, "You have heard it said," and then, instead of using the word "by" as to cite his rabbinical source, he used the word "but." "You have heard it said, but I say to you." We can find multiple examples of this in Matthew chapter 5 and 6 during the famous Sermon on the Mount. Jesus proclaims, "You have heard that it was said to those of old, 'You shall not murder, and whoever murders will be in danger of the judgment.' But I say to you, that whoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment." Or, "You have heard that it was said to those of old, 'You shall not commit adultery.' But I say to you, that whoever looks at a woman to lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart." You see, unlike the legal specialists that the scribes and religious leaders considered themselves to be, Jesus did not need to base his authority on that of other rabbis. Because Jesus was the Son of God, he knew exactly what the scriptures said and meant. He wrote them. He was the ultimate authority, and he claimed that authority in the words that he spoke. But we see in our text at hand that Jesus did not just claim authority in his words, but also in his actions. After Jesus commanded the demon to come out of the man in Capernaum, the people were all amazed. So they questioned among themselves, saying, "What is this? What new doctrine is this? For with authority he commands even the unclean spirits, and they obey him." With a simple yet strong command, the evil spirit did the only thing it could do, and obeyed the words of the one with the higher authority. Upon witnessing this incredible display of power over the spiritual forces at work, the people responded appropriately, with amazement and awe. They understood that a new power implied a new revelation, that something more profound than anything they'd ever known before might be expected from this man who commanded even the demons with authority and was obeyed. This was one of the many things about Jesus that the scribes and Pharisees took issue with as they began to build their case against Jesus. In fact, they would later confront Jesus at the temple in Jerusalem and challenge his authority directly. You see, they were so concerned with the rules of their religious system that instead of responding to Jesus with awe and amazement like the people in Capernaum, hoping for the promised one who would come to save them all, they hated him, and they condemned him for not following their rules. They were so concerned with maintaining their own level of authority that they were unwilling to acknowledge the ultimate authority. The lesson here is simple. The word authority, defined by Webster's dictionary, is the power to influence or command thought, opinion, or behavior. Who has authority in your life? Is it Jesus, or is it you? Actually, a better way to put it would be, how do you respond to God's authority in your life? Do you respect it, or do you rebel against it?